roadmaps, joining the dots between product, architecture and management. So can we give a big warm welcome to James?
Hello everybody, thank you. This tends to work much better if you lot heckle. Because I can stand here talking for 25 minutes and you'll be asleep. But have we got any architects in the room? People go have an architect label, tech architects, business architects? Yeah, that'll do. Any managers in the room? People who call themselves managers of people? Yeah, okay. Do you find, as architects and managers, that you have an easy life working with dev teams? Dev teams, do you find an easy life working with architects and managers? Different way of putting it. Maybe, okay. This is all around that. Well, first off, I can't claim credit for everything in here. I got this from a really, really gifted chap, or a lot of the foundations of this from a really gifted chap called Jan Grape, of Crisp fame over in Sweden. Chap called Henrik Nyberg, some people may be familiar with. Same agency, Spotify model, which never really was a model that actually did anything, yada yada. That lot. Bumped into Jan a few years, well, about a decade back in a job somewhere, and he shared some of this. I've also borrowed heavily from Roman Pichler. Anyone know Roman Pichler? Yeah. So I brought a bit of that into here as well. So a lot of credits on the front of here. I cannot claim all of this. A lot of it is some of mine. A lot of it's come from elsewhere as we've gone along. So who am I? I'm James Pells. It's pretty obvious. It says up there. Founder and CEO, as Lauren said, of Proven EA. It's specialist business efficiency. It's that whole thing of how do we work on the right things. I had a great talk on how you make the teams work well, on how teams can function well. But how do you make sure that the stuff coming into the team is the right stuff in the first place? That's kind of where I've been focusing on the last few years and where this is coming into it. Anyone wants to find out a bit more about Proven EA, there's a QR code, and anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, another QR code. That's as much as I'm going to talk about me. So roadmaps. I'm going to kick off because, as every talk should, with the South Park video. It's only 30 seconds.
This is where all our work is done.
So what are you going to do with all these underpants that you steal?
Collecting underpants is just phase one. Phase one, collect underpants.
So what's phase two?
Hey, what's phase two? Phase one, we collect underpants. Yeah, but what about phase two? Well, phase three is profit. Get it?
I don't get it.
You see, phase one, collect underpants. Phase two, phase three, profit.
Bit of chuckling. This looked familiar in terms of how roadmaps where you are work. Got a lovely idea of stuff. We can make loads and loads of stuff. Brilliant. And we're going to get loads of money out of it. But no one quite joins the dots in terms of how. And we end up with roadmaps that look a bit like this. We can deliver this great thing. And now we've got a super delivery and a duper delivery. And then we've got a really important delivery and another delivery. And then somehow we're going to be rich. But no one quite knows how or why. It tells us what we're going to be delivering, but not why we're going to be delivering it. And it doesn't give us any options. It just gives us a scope list. It gives us a list of things to deliver and not problems solved. And we have no idea how it helps the business goal. Are we just collecting underpants? This is a real roadmap. This is actually my trip here today. Turns out I didn't go that route. I went up via Manchester. But the whole point of this is it tells me where I started off. Look, that's my daughter Annabelle. That's her mobile phone at home, or when I made this picture. I live in Staffordshire. I might care that I'm leaving Staffordshire on my trip up here. I might care I'm entering Yorkshire. I don't really care what route I take. That doesn't matter. One of my goal is to get to Leeds. As long as I can get from my little daughter Annabelle up to Leeds, happy days. The other thing it does, it gives us additional information. Like, it's probably going to be raining in Manchester when I drive past. And if I have a problem in Yorkshire, I'm going to get a decent cup of tea. So it's The whole point of this is, what I want to illustrate is it isn't giving me a direct thing. You must do this, then this, then this, then this. It says, you're here, you want to get to there, you've got options. And it's up to you how you actually go about tackling that. So where does it fit? And anyone fan of Roman Fish will probably recognize this. It fits in between understanding what the objective is and the product backlog. So we have the company goal. Then we have a series of objectives en route to that company goal. We have a product roadmap, how we're going to achieve those objectives, and then we have a product backlog, which is exactly the same product backlog as Steve was talking about earlier. It gives us a high-level plan. It shows business goals over a period of time, could be next 6 months, next year, whatever makes sense in your context. And it shows how those goals are going to be achieved. And it connects product strategy with the product backlog. What might one look like? Starting point, business goal. Why? Simon Sinek, various other people start with why. What's the purpose of doing this? Steve mentioned one of the things in Scrum, the vision. Everything hangs on that vision. If we haven't got a vision, stop. We don't know why we're here. No point doing any work. At this point, you're generating waste until you work out what that vision is. So our vision, business goal, we want to increase our user count by 10,000. Okay, that's a valid thing I want to go after now. And we've got a series of objectives along the way. So the first thing we're going to be going after, I'm not going to say how we're going to do it. The first thing I want to go after is getting our user churn rate down. We might be thinking as an e-commerce site, people are coming, they're leaving, we're not getting anything from them. We need to bring that down a bit. Once we've got our churn rate down, we can go to our next objective. In this case, sample here, we're going to increase our referrals by 75%. We might have a fighting chance of that if we get the churn rate down because people start liking it. And once we've done that, I know the poor chap's been cancelled, but his work is so funny, I can't not include it. We're going to get 2,000 users in Albonia. Points for the reference, anyone, but hey. Between them, oh yeah, and then we also have to work within existing architecture, so our constraints, existing architecture, and then between them, we have our roadmap. So the roadmap here, it isn't do this, do this, do this, do this. It's reach this objective, reach this objective, reach this objective, and then we're done. So all of a sudden, it's gone from creating stuff, being a feature factory, whatever you want to call it, to achieving outcomes. Even if we only get as far as here, user churn rate down to 7%, we've achieved value. The company is in a better place than it was when it started. If I create 5 things, who knows if the company's in a better place? So this gives us the beginnings of another kind of roadmap. Start off with a company objective, right at the very top, and from there we can get some goals. So this gives us what we're aiming at and why we're doing it. What we deliver, features and stories, this can always be replaced, but the critical thing about them is that they will always contribute to one of those goals. Now we can expand it, and it's a little bit experimental, this talk, so bear with me for the management, with the management piece. I've done this with architecture a lot. It's the first time I brought management into it. It's quite close to my heart because it's what I've been working with for the last few years, so I hope this works. Architecture enables business value. So agile architecture is it's the first time I use the word agile. It's interesting. It's kind of like laying the tracks as the train's running. It supports the running software all the time. A few things about it. Train is product development, and the track is the architecture that's running on. Then we bring management into it. Management is providing the support and clearing the way. We think of a Scrum Master role as being the facilitator of stuff. Absolutely is. But can the Scrum Master make sure we've recruited the people at the right time? They've got the finance in place at the right time. We've arranged all the training, possibly the training, not sure. We've got an expert consultant in if we need it for a certain thing. It's probably outside the realm of what a Scrum Master can do. It's in the realm of what they can arrange, not necessarily what they can do. So we now start seeing the management team as a contributor to the team. I like to see them as one of that development team that Steve was talking about, not necessarily just the big brother looking down on what's going on. Agile architecture and management. Both should be delivered just in time. What that means in reality, it's as late as possible, where we have the maximum information. If I start creating architecture for something which, I'll pick on you again because Steve did that. Which someone over here. You're writing some software, you know that you're going to be building X widget in a year's time, possibly, because that's roughly when you think you might get around to it. Not actually going to know that far in advance. But if I start building architecture for that, and you might be building it in cloud, you might be building it on tin, you don't know if it's going to be in Google, you don't know if it's going to be on AWS, you don't know where it's going to be, you don't know what tech you're going to be writing it on. What is the value in me building architecture at that point? Absolutely none. So I want to do it so that that architecture arrives as it is needed. So it's never too late, because otherwise we end up in sort of tech debt, overruns, rework, and so on. There's a lovely moment, last responsible moment, or latest responsible moment, that's governed by risk and lead time and so on. So if I know that I've got to buy some hardware from specialist hardware from somewhere that's got 6 months lead time, my last responsible moment is going to be 6 months before I need it. That's when the decision has to be made. But if I'm building something which I know I can spin up in a virtual machine in half an hour, today is probably the last responsible moment. So depends entirely on the context, but think around when it's needed, what risks involved, what lead times are there, and so on. Ideally, it should arrive as it becomes needed. Probably a little bit before, because you end up leaving yourself in all sorts of trouble if you get it wrong, but whatever. The other thing, both should always enable business value. Technology and management related stuff should always be visible in the backlog. Coming back to this whole thing of it becomes teamwork, the management and architects become part of the delivery team. And it should always have, have dependent business stories and features. So what does that look like? If we have a program backlog, project backlog, product backlog, whatever you want to call it, we have a feature, depends on an architectural enabler. We have a different feature, depends on a management enabler. We might need some training, we might need a new team, we might need a reorg for that to happen. The point being that each of these things should happen just in time for these. So if we're working down our list, we deliver the architectural enabler, then we can work on a feature. We deliver the management enabler, we can work on a feature, and so on. We now start expanding that roadmap that we've got into 3 supporting roadmaps. We've got our objective and our goals, and we've got our features that we mentioned earlier. Something important here, these features, they get broken down. I've used increments because this is kind of leaning a bit on safe terminology. It doesn't really matter a damn where an increment is here. It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a year, it doesn't matter at all. Whatever makes sense in your context. But the stuff further down the line, these can be quite big things because we're not going to know the detail. We're not going to want to break them down. Because if I want to break them down now, I'm basically putting detail into something that, I don't know about. So if I'm doing it in a year or I need it in a year, why put the work into it now when I could be working on something else? We're in lost opportunity cost, we're in all sorts of other costs there. And again, we're introducing waste if we break it down. The caveat on that is put enough work into these things in the future that you know what they are and that you definitely don't need to bring them in earlier. So enough work to understand them, but no more than that. Once we've got those in place and we've got an idea of how we're going to be delivering things, we can be having a look at our technology roadmap. This is where we work with our architects, part of the team, and advising on how we're going to go about building those things. So to deliver these features, we're going to need an enabler. To deliver these features, we're going to need another enabler. We're probably going to need a spike because we don't know what that enabler is. We don't know what that architecture is going to be, so we're going to have to do some investigation work. So spikes coming into here. Spikes will also appear in the product roadmap. That's absolutely fine, but they can appear in both. Once we've figured out then as well what our features are and how we're going to go about building them, our management team then comes into it. We've got a spike. Don't know much about here. Probably want to get some training in. Got some books. We do training other ways than books, but we got some books. We've got more things happening here. Teams do we need to get a bigger team? This little symbol, this came from when I was working in Experian, and we had a delightful scenario where team committed to what they were doing, everyone was really happy. Team was based over in India, and then they found they had no access to the Experian data set because of security restrictions. So having that thing in here, it's just an example that made sense in that context. Anything along those lines, the blockers, the challenges, the things which aren't quite in the team's remit to deal with, the normal dev team's remit to deal with, management are going to need to get involved. Bring them in, make them part of it. We might have a superstar. We might want someone who comes in and the contractor knows everything they're talking about, can introduce, we never work with AWS, as a for instance, God knows why not, but we never work with AWS. So bring someone in who can do some skills transfer in. We might need an org restructure. That's happened a few times that I've been around. Might need to bring some more people on, more training, whatever else. The whole point in getting at is to support the work that we're doing. We need architecture and we need these things which management are delivering into here. So top row is strategy to reach the objectives. Middle row, making the technology available for that. And then the bottom row is making sure that we've got capacity, skill levels right, and so on. The last thing with this, I just put a whole bunch of lines in here, we have to have sequencing in here. So we need to know, like I said at the beginning, what each of these things delivers to. Because if I've got something in here, an enabler, but it hasn't got a feature that it relates to, well, what's it enabling? Why are we doing it? Bring something else in, because this is wasted effort, unless we have a reason for doing it. So all of these sequence lines need to be in there as well. Responsibilities for these, product owner owned in this top row, architect owned in this middle row, line manager owned in this bottom row. I am not going to get, or I'm not going to recommend that you get stuck on job titles. These are roles, accountabilities, anyone playing that thing. It's the talk about Scrum earlier. Huge thing. I'm called a Scrum Master because it's my job title. Anyone in the team can be a Scrum Master. It's an accountability within that team. It isn't a job title. Sorry, anyone who's called Scrum Master. Additional rows we can always add in. I tend to find this can get quite big. We might have multiple teams coming into here. It starts looking an awful lot like a SAFe program board. Not that that's a bad thing. I think it's one of the few good things out of SAFe. I love that program board and it has a lot of value in here, but it has a lot of problems associated with it as well. Different story. We can use it for external dependencies. So if we're relying on a third-party supplier, yeah, bring them in. They're not necessarily going to be part of the team, but we do need to track them. Because if this thing is dependent on something a third-party supplier is doing, a third-party supplier shifts out to here, we probably need to change the order of work that we're doing. Stuff's going to go wrong, but let it go wrong with eyes open, not just stumble into it. So from the roadmap to the backlog, populating the backlog. Each team has a common backlog. So we can end up with multiples of these. We could end up presenting it differently. It doesn't really matter. But this represents what a team is doing. If you're in less land, it might be multiple teams. It doesn't really matter. From here, we can build out our increments and we can work out what a backlog looks like. I've split them out horizontally to make it a little bit more clear what's going on with it. But reality is time goes this way. So we have a feature, we can do that by itself, great. Again, we've got an enabler, which is needed for these two features. We've got a management enabler needed for this spike, which is needed for this architecture enabler, needed for this epic. Again, we can track it all the way down and we manage our backlog of work in the right way. This is more Kanban than Scrum. There's absolutely no reason at all why it can't work in Scrum. It just informs the order of things that the team's bringing into the backlog for any given sprint. Overall, it has to be owned by the product owner because they, if we're using the product owner term correctly, are accountable for the profitability, viability, whatever profitability actually looks like in your organization. It may not be money, but the value that that product delivers and the associated costs that go with it. The mini entrepreneur PO role, not the I take orders from stakeholders PO. It's contributed to by the architects and the managers. And everyone works closely with stakeholders. Because we haven't got this feedback loops going, we don't know if we've got this wrong. The only person, or the only people rather, who can tell us, are we really going in the right direction, are the stakeholders. They're the ones who are using it. The PO should be really, really close to them, but the stakeholders are going to be the ones that know, are we building the right things in the right order? Is it going to add value and so on? From there, we can break this down into sprints, and it gives us a simple mechanism then from going from what that roadmap looks like down to what our actual sprint backlog looks like. So I've taken one of these, broken it down, and it becomes a bunch of different things in here. Exactly how that happens will depend sprint by sprint and increment by increment. I'm going to pause there because the next bit is going off on a bit of a tangent. Any questions at this point? haven't been heckled yet.
You're actually proposing plotting all the way to sprint 6, or you're just saying, when you get
This is, like I say, it's lifted from safe land where you would do that in, you'd plot it quarter by quarter. No, if I'm in Scrum land, I absolutely definitely wouldn't. I might have an idea what's going on down here. I've got some big chunks of stuff. It gets fluffy and vague. Options, I mentioned this earlier. Locking down decisions late when you have maximum knowledge. Dead easy to say, right, I'm going to commit to doing this now. I don't actually know what I need. Is it the right thing? The whole point. Should it be Google? Should it be Azure? Should it be AWS? Should it be tin? Do I actually need it at all, or should it be a notebook? So time's going across this way for anyone who can't read the writing on here. These are just different increments, spreads, months, years, hours, whatever you want. And number of options going up here. Beginning of this sprint, increment, whatever, I should have a pretty good idea how I'm going to go about building everything in this increment. If not, I'm guessing. And that isn't so great. What's coming down here, I've probably got multiple options. Which cloud platform am I using? Should I be using tin? Whatever, all that sort of stuff again. Doesn't matter so much here. I've got time to think about it. So one way of tackling that is doing spikes as we go through. Try things, investigate it. Is this going to give me the solution I want? Actually, no, that one isn't. Don't bother doing that. There's a big problem with AWS. We can't use it. Have to use Azure or whatever. And apologies to any fans of AWS. But it's that whole investigation process through that. So that as we do these investigations, by the time we get to the beginning of the next increment, we brought our options from here down to here. And then the next one, and so on, as we're going through it. Important, we can change our mind at any point. But it's really, really, really expensive to change it here. Cost of change looks something along these lines. If I'm going to change something I haven't even thought about how I'm going to build it yet, who cares? Doesn't matter. But if I'm halfway through building something and I find this tech is wrong, it could have been, that example at Experian, it could have been very, very expensive. It could have been a very pissed off client who pulled the money for that thing. It turns out not to be. But the cost of change up here, it can be very, very high because the very least, you're stopping the team working for a day while they rethink about what they're doing. You've possibly then got to pause and work out new tech. You've possibly got to spend some time refining a whole bunch of features that you hadn't thought about doing until down there. So this curve, I mean, there's no scale on it, but you get the idea of expensive now, or sort my options out for later. Yeah, changing work, yeah, same thing. So in terms of your question, do you want to ask that question again?
I'm thinking of like the leadership mindset that's needed for that roadmap to work in the right way.
Yeah.
Because I guess in some contexts, yes, you can plan a few sprints ahead and give that autonomy. In the org I'm in now, or like in big, I guess, corporations, it's like senior leaders say, right, I want a roadmap for like 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and it's the one cost against features.
Yeah.
So how do you sort of like, tackle that?
Education, I think.
Yeah.
Pointing out that you've asked for this thing. I can put 3 weeks work into understanding that, breaking it down, doing the refinement, working out exactly how I'm going to build it, design some architecture, all the rest of it. We don't know if it's going to be what the customer even needs by that point. Or we can be prioritizing it in terms of just on a backlog order. It's down there. We know we need to do it. We know it's more important than that. We know it's less important than this. Essentially, it's all the backlog ever is. What do you want us to do? I think it's crucial there to be in a position where you can have a reasonably honest conversation with the leadership team. And the whole point about the whole visibility thing, everything else, around this is the impact of asking for change now. This is the impact of making a commitment now. We could make a commitment and it's a gamble. Essentially, it becomes a bet. The further it is down the road, the higher the stakes on that bet are. Essentially, it becomes a bet that, like I say, on is it the right thing to do? We don't necessarily know it's the right thing to do. And if I try and commit to something now, I'm going to get it wrong by an incrementally large amount each time. Have you heard of the cone of uncertainty? So right now, I've got quite a narrow set of options. Things are pretty certain. As it goes further out, it expands. As it goes out further out, it expands again. So that cone of uncertainty basically looks kind of like that, where I've got many, many options in the future and few options now. The client is going to be somewhere around, or the client need is going to be somewhere on the face of that cone. As we get closer and closer, the range of places where that client can be, her client need can be, is much, much smaller. So the point I'm getting at is, if I try and commit to something in 6 months' time, then I'm guessing where the client's going to be. If I'm trying to commit to something in 2 weeks' time, I've got a pretty good idea and I'm not going to get it wrong. That's the kind of uncertainty, really. So be able to have that open conversation. And frankly, I'd say that if your leadership team isn't willing to listen, there's a cultural challenge which is going to get in the way no matter what approach you take.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like, the reality is that's what they ask for, and it's a big problem to solve, isn't it? But yeah, good to chat to you afterwards.
Well, then you're in the land of fixed cost project or cost plus projects, or
This is what I was saying with the Gantt chart. I think it's like they can be used in a really good way, a roadmap, in the right way. What I see a lot of the time in orgs, big orgs, is they just use like a Gantt chart.
essentially I'm building a project plan because you said I have to this, and this. I can't adapt. No point inspecting. Just go and build it and then whack on a 30% premium because I got that much uncertainty.
Yeah, and I honestly think that's why everyone gets so pissed off with Scrum, because they shove that framework on top of it, and all the devs are like, why are we doing all these events, not ceremonies? Because they're not actually that valuable, because they can't go to the Scrum review and say, actually, I want to change this, the customer said that. Do you know what I mean? So you've got that framework on top of projects. I'm not saying it's Scrum all the time.
Yeah. Lovely expression. I can't remember the guy who taught it me. Agile bubbles. If your organisation is absolutely resistant to working in an agile way, but you find a little bit that is, create an agile bubble. Really, really, really careful with that. Manage the interface, because what you're doing in an agile way, the organisation is expecting to see in a project way. That interface is crucial. Scrum Master land, managing that interface, making sure it all goes right. When you start demonstrating success, that bubble can grow. You might find other bubbles appear elsewhere as well, and then they can start joining. Really, really hard change journey. I'd come back to what I was saying around here. I've got pretty well refined features, granular refined features down here. I can put a cost in that. That's 2,000, that's 8,000, that's £7,683.24p. These ones, 10, 20k, 30, 40k, whatever number makes sense. 100, 200k, depending on what your uncertainty factors are on here. It's going to take me I know we're going to need roughly these extra skills. I know we're going to need a few extra people. I don't know exactly how much, but it will be hopefully enough to be able to make the point. I can tell you to a fine degree what's going on here. I've got less and less figures out here, but I can give you a range. There's Henrik Nyberg, again, mentioned that chap, has in a great video, well worth looking at if you haven't seen it, Product Ownership in a Nutshell. It's a animated video he did, must have been 15 years ago. He goes through Kanban metrics and how to use them to predict or as they give a forecast of where things are actually at. So a burn up chart is absolutely brilliant for this. It includes the idea of changing scope, and it includes the changing rate and how you actually get there. I'll include a link to share when the session goes out. And he does it. We haven't really got time to go into that now, but he does a great explanation of this stuff. I'll happily go through that with you separately as well.
Well done, and thank you to James. Some great conversations there, so thank you.